Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome back to our World Cup dedicated podcast with me, Harry Symeou. Thank you so much for being here. We've got quite a bit of football to unpack from the last couple of days, so we're going to do that right away. We'll dive straight into it. We'll start with the US, who kicked off their campaign in very impressive fashion, you have to say. Now, I knew going into this game that this wasn't the best Paraguayan side I've seen over the years, but I did think they'd provide some form of stern opposition to Mauricio Pochettino's men, and it just wasn't the case. Now, I think the US were massively helped by the fact that they scored an early goal. That set the tone. That meant that Paraguay's game plan had gone out of the window early doors. But you have to give credit to Mauricio Pochettino's side, who I thought throughout the game played really well. The own goal kicked it all off, and then there was a couple of excellent goals from Folarin Balogun. The first one, a brilliant finish into the bottom corner, really well taken. And his second one, well, that was even better. The way he sort of took the ball out towards the left-hand side, or towards his left, I beg your pardon, made room for the shot and then finished brilliantly into the top corner. A sign of what a wonderful striker he's matured into since leaving Arsenal Football Club. He's always talked about in such high regard when it comes to the French football world in which he now currently plays. But I think for me, this was a surprise. As an Arsenal fan, as someone who's watched him from the very beginning of his career, I was pleasantly surprised to see the way that he's developed, and to do it on the biggest stage in a pressure situation. Fantastic. Paraguay did pull a goal back and make it 3-1, but Gio Reyna produced a wonderful finish with the outside of his boot to wrap up the result and the points for the US men's national team and put the result and the game beyond any doubt whatsoever. But it's not just about the result for me. It's about the performance. I was really impressed with the US. I look at their team nowadays and I think it's a really accomplished side. You look through it and you can find names that are associated with the top 5 leagues in Europe pretty much everywhere. And that is a real sign of how football in the US has developed over the years, that clubs in Europe's top 5 leagues are now looking at the US-based talent pool and saying, he'd be a good fit for us. Let's get him in. And I think that's really aided their development as a national team, given that, of course, in the States, football, or soccer as they call it, isn't, of course, the primary sport. It isn't the biggest sport. It isn't even close. But there's been a lot of progress over the years, and I thought you saw that just the other night. Credit to Mauricio Pochettino, because they seem to be playing with a real sort of bravery and aggression. Tactically, I'm sure they're going to be better for having a coach of that caliber within their ranks. But I did wonder going into this tournament if the pressure was going to get to them. I did wonder if the expectation around them, given that they're a host nation, was not quite aligned with where they're actually at as a national team. I thought they did a brilliant job of shaking all of that off, going out there, putting on a show and building a real confidence around what they can do in the remainder of the tournament. Fantastic performance from them. They look a really useful side. And I'll tell you what, given they're at home as well, there won't be many that would fancy facing them. I have to say already this World Cup is taking its toll on my body clock. I stayed up really late to watch the US men's national team. And then, of course, on Saturday night, I was up late watching Brazil against Morocco after, of course, I'd sat and watched Switzerland against Qatar. But we'll get into those games in a minute because I want to focus on one of the shock results of the World Cup so far. Turkey, a lot of people's dark horses, stunned by Australia. 2-0 win for Australia. And you have to say their game plan was executed to absolute perfection, and they were deserved winners, in my opinion. Yes, Turkey had a lot of the ball. I think they had over 70% of the possession. But when you watch the highlights back, you will realize that actually Turkey were limited to exclusively shots from outside the penalty area, really. The goalkeeper, of course, Patrick Beach in goal, first World Cup game for him. He was brilliant. He was in fine form. He made some really smart stops. But Australia just did such a wonderful job of defending their penalty area, limiting Turkey, as I say, to efforts from distance. And they showed a real efficiency, and they really did pack a punch on the counter-attack, which was great to see. Nestori Irankunda was up front. He was the one that scored the opening goal. It was a long direct ball from deep over the top that set him on his way. But from then on, he still had a lot to do. It was a brilliant touch from him to take the ball inside. The weight on the touch was perfect because it meant that he could get on the end of it, but it meant that those defenders that were trying to close the space, trying to close the gap, they just couldn't get there in time. He knew what he was going to do. And so, of course, when you're sort of the one about to take that touch and you know what's coming next, you're on your bike nice and early, which makes it tougher for the defenders anyway. But then the finish was brilliant. He just slots it past the goalkeeper into the bottom corner and stuns Turkey, who I'd imagine at that point still felt they had a great chance of winning the game. They continued to dominate possession. They continued to knock on the door. There was an effort from distance from Berdaki that came off the post. Really, really good effort from him. But Turkey just could not break the Aussies down, only for Australia to then hit a second through Connor Metcalf. Wonderful finish. He's carrying the ball. He's driving at the Turkish penalty area. He looks up, spots the shooting opportunity, and drives a low effort into the bottom corner and took the game away from Turkey, who I think will be bitterly disappointed with that outcome. You look at their team, it's stacked with top quality players, the likes of Hakan Çalhanoğlu, the fact that Arda Güler's in there as well. They had the likes of Kenan Yildiz on the bench too. They've got a lot of good players in that Turkey side. And as I say, a lot of people, myself included, had them down as one of the potential dark horses. Vincenzo Montella, the Italian, of course, is the coach as well. And you look at it all and you think, wow, that's a decent side, a decent outfit. They could do some damage in this competition. Listen, I still think Turkey have a great chance of going through, but this was the worst possible start from a side that were expected to do quite well in this fixture and go on and win this. They'd have been heavy favourites to win this game, but take nothing away from Australia. This is the beauty. This is the magic of the World Cup. You turn up with a game plan in a one-off game. If you get the rub of the green, if things go your way, and if your big players step up and produce when it really matters, you can get the outcome that you want. And Australia got that. So congratulations to them. I just want to briefly touch on the Switzerland-Qatar game. This was probably the game that I looked at yesterday and thought, I don't really mind if I miss this, if I'm being completely honest. And I did miss the first sort of 20, 25 minutes of this game because, of course, my daughter demanded that I was the one that put her to bed. So by the time I came downstairs, I looked at the score. Switzerland were 1-0 up. Brie Mbolo from the spot. It felt to me that there was an offside in the lead up to that penalty award. We never got the images, I don't think, not while we were watching the broadcast live anyway, from FIFA to confirm the decision that he was on, which I thought was crazy and a real letdown. Given the tech is there and we're supposed to trust it, just show us, for God's sake. It isn't really that difficult, is it? But that sparked a bit of controversy. Anyway, Switzerland go a goal to the good. Didn't play particularly well after that. I thought it was a bit of a damp squib of a game. Between Switzerland scoring and Qatar's late equalizer. But that Qatari equalizer, that meant so much. That meant so much to a nation that have really and truly no World Cup history prior to them hosting the last tournament, to a nation that, football is growing in. And who want to show that they're a serious outfit. Julian Lopetegui, the coach, they've done everything they can to go out and get someone experienced and someone with the pedigree at this level, which Julian Lopetegui absolutely has. And that was the kind of result that I think sent shockwaves through that Swiss camp. Is it a disaster? No. Will they go through? Probably. But I think there was a little bit of complacency in that Swiss performance after they scored. I don't think they did enough. They needed to put the game to bed. And of course, they were dealt that blow by the Qataris at the other end of the pitch. And it was just a great moment for everyone of a neutral persuasion. Swiss neutral, you get it? Anyway, we move on. Scotland beat Haiti in the early hours of this morning. I have to hold my hands up. I didn't watch this one in full. As I mentioned, I stayed up for the US. I watched Brazil-Morocco last night. By the time that finished, it was around about 1 a.m. And by then, knowing that I wanted to get up and watch Australia and Turkey as well at 5 a.m. this morning UK time, I was completely out of it and I needed to get some sleep. As I say, this World Cup already wreaking havoc on my body clock. But look, Scotland with a 1-0 win over Haiti. John McGinn's deflected effort found its way into the back of the net. That was the only goal of the game. Look, I'd been on the radio on Friday and I'd warned that this was going to be a tough game for Scotland. Haiti are no mugs. They're physical. It's a World Cup. This is, a huge occasion for all of those players. They'd have been desperate to make an impression, desperate to have an impact. And you know what? They did. They made life difficult for Scotland, and they provided the Scots with a couple of scares as well late on in the game. So, for me, brilliant result for Scotland. They had to win this. If they were to stand any chance of getting through this group stage, they had to beat the Haitians, and they've done it. So credit where credit's due. It's been a long old wait for Scotland, 10,000 plus days, 28 years since they were last at a World Cup. They're here. They sung the national anthem with real passion and gusto, and that'll be one of the moments of the tournament so far. Just kind of taking that all in. We know the Tartan Army travel in their numbers. We know they do a great job of getting behind their team and supporting their team. And they did exactly that everywhere you looked inside that stadium. And yeah, there were some Haitians in attendance as well. But everywhere you looked in that stadium, you could see that orange color shirt that the Scots were wearing on the night. Big result for them, massive result for them. Not too much to say about the performance or in terms of takeaways from the game, because as I say, I didn't watch it in full. A game I did watch in full, however, was that brilliant match between Brazil and Morocco. The start from Morocco was just truly sensational. Now, we know that this is a very useful Moroccan team. They made it very, very far in the last World Cup, as far as the last four. We know that they are the African champions at the moment, but that is very controversial given that Senegal actually won the game. But because they walked off the pitch at one stage, the African Federation felt it fit to award the title to the Moroccans. Sorry, but if you don't get your hands on the trophy, if you don't lift it, if you don't have that moment, can it ever feel real? I'd imagine that some of those Moroccans might not say it publicly, but I think they probably agree with me as well. But what a start from the Moroccans. The way they were pinging the ball around, they played with confidence. They played with a real bravery. And I love the fact that, it would have been quite easy actually for them to walk out alongside the Seleção in their famous yellow shirts to look around the stadium and see predominantly yellow shirts, because even the neutrals always want to adopt Brazil and think, yeah, the occasion here is probably too big for us, and allow it to swallow you up. And they just did not let that happen. As I say, some brilliant individual performances. Hakimi was like a train up and down on the right-hand side. I thought Mazraoui on the left was very, very good as well. Saibari up front was excellent. Buadi in midfield is a player that on my Arsenal podcast we've talked about at length this morning, because I think we all recognize what a talent he is. He was brilliant in midfield, dictating play, constantly looking for a forward pass, constantly looking to work the ball through the lines. I just thought Morocco was sensational. And when they took that lead, they 100% deserved it. It was a lovely ball in behind. Caught Gabriel Magalhaes out a little bit, I think, and Saibari runs through, doesn't overcomplicate it, doesn't overthink it, lifts it over the onrushing Alisson, and Morocco are in front. However, and I was texting my brother about a minute before Brazil scored their equalizing goal. I said, look, while it's only one, Brazil have the talent to get back in this game at any given point. And lo and behold, Vinicius Jr. picks up the ball so wide, looks like he's got no angle, just checks inside, creates the angle for himself, and lets rip into that far corner. Stunning goal, stunning finish, and Brazil were back on level terms. And I think the pattern of the game changed at that point. It sort of to and froed a little bit. There were points where you felt that Brazil were in control. There were points where you felt that the Moroccans were in control. What I will say is that the second half was really disappointing. It was really flat. When you consider what the first half played out like, I had massive expectations for that second period. Maybe it was the heat. Maybe it was the fact that both sides were probably quietly okay with taking a draw against the other best team in the group. Maybe it was a bit of that as well. In terms of my takeaway is that Morocco are a really good side, that they've got a lot of talented players, and they're going to take some beating in this competition. But my other big takeaway was that Brazil have some really big issues. Now, I know that they've got the talent at the top end of the pitch that probably allows them to mask those issues at times, and means they are by default a threat in this competition to anyone. But I thought their midfield was nowhere near functional enough. I think they were made to look really, really bad by a young Moroccan midfield, a very dynamic Moroccan midfield. And I think the fullback positions that you normally associate with Brazil as being really effective and important in the way they attack, I don't think what they had last night and what they have at this tournament is necessarily up to scratch. So Carlo Ancelotti's got some thinking to do. One of the great things about Carlo Ancelotti as a coach is that he isn't like a slave to any particular system or any particular philosophy. He will do what he thinks right. He's very adaptable. And I think that's what's one of his best attributes and assets as a coach. He played with three in midfield yesterday, which I'm told is not something that Brazil normally do. It isn't the Brazilian way, but he tried to adapt to what they were facing. Turns out, even with three in midfield, they struggled. So can you imagine what would have happened if he went with a two? I think Brazil will improve. I don't think they'll win this competition based on what I saw last night. I think there's a lot of room for improvement. And I'm not sure they've got the players this time around to kind of be as devastating as they have been in World Cups gone by. But yeah, I still think they're a threat by default because of the talent they have, but they're not vintage Brazil. And I think Morocco showed everybody that last night. Don't forget to leave a like on the video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you're new. Thank you so, so much for being with us. If you're listening to this in podcast format, thank you so, so much for your support. Really, really do appreciate it. And I'll see you all very, very soon. Let me know what you thought of today's episode of World Cup Daily. Goodbye.